The judge just humiliated Johnny Somali in court after it was extremely obvious he just kept lying in court and thus committed perjury. And this is just an insane update revolving the whole Johnny Somali criminal trial, but this court hearing that we're talking about today is actually a completely separate trial than the main one that we've been covering for roughly a year now. All right, so we now are about to walk into the Johnny Somali case. Most people don't know about this, but we were lucky enough to get the information from one of the other Korean streamers who essentially was indicted, and now a bunch of them have to testify, including Johnny Somali. So this will be interesting to see what happens. Up until now, nobody knew about this new trial except for the internal circle of the Korean streamers involved. And this is because Johnny pressed charges on another Korean streamer. And the reason Johnny did so was because Johnny showed the deepfake first, and then Youngman found out there was a deepfake of him making out with Hank, Johnny's friend. And obviously he was very upset about it, so he then showed the clip on his stream while he was venting about how he felt like this was disgusting, that this was done without his permission. But that turned out to be a massive mistake for Youngman to do so. And Youngman, he has a good lawyer and a good strategy, but he's currently in prison and he's coming as a defendant because Johnny filed this charge against Youngman to essentially lower his own sentence because he wants Youngman to drop the charge against him. The goal here is to essentially get some sort of legal settlement. What he's missing though is South Korea really wants you to apologize formally. And Youngman has formally apologized to the courts 5 different times by handwritten letters from jail. And Johnny so far hasn't apologized a single time. And the worst part is Johnny has pleaded not guilty for doing the exact same thing that he's pressing charges against Youngman for doing. Because remember, his whole defense in the last court date I covered was, I didn't make them, I may have just distributed them. We know for a fact that Youngman did not make these. All he did was show it on his stream. So he just distributed them, he didn't make them. So make it make sense. This is just extremely hypocritical. And I really don't think that's gonna help his current criminal trial. But once we arrived at court, we found out that Johnny is pressing charges against Youngman for a whole plethora of things, not just the deepfakes. So obviously, deepfakes, we expected that, but the new ones were stalking, which is okay, and assaulting him with a baton.
So this one started with the deepfake, and then they added the baton in like May, and then added stalking in August.
Who's the first witness?
Hank's the first witness. So Hank is the first witness.
Hank's the first one. Hank, you, Ramsey Khalid, Ismail, and Big TV.
Okay,
We're gonna hear
those
from
3 guys.
그러면 종찬이는
Very interesting.
So Hank's supposed to be the testifier, and Youngman is standing on the
On the stand.
Yeah, on the stand.
These are more serious charges against Youngman.
Yeah.
Second, third, fourth offense. Of course, he documented everything. He live streamed
Yeah.
everything. It's still there for you to go and see.
Youngman did
Yeah.
say he
So-
hit Ramsey with the baton.
So shall we?
Yeah.
Silence your phones.
Crazy. Which is extremely rich coming from Johnny because he was the one who showed the deepfakes first while bragging about it. He was the one who live streamed himself stalking the female streamer Nanati. And of course, Twiddledee and Twiddledum here were the ones who brought the baton to the fight.
Youngman, that's a baton. Youngman picked my baton up. And chasing me.
So, on October 22nd, the people who testified were Hank Yu, which is, Johnny's only friend here in Korea, Johnny Somali, or Ramsey Ismail, and Bang TV. Quick lore dump. Bang TV is a Korean IRL streamer who is one of 4 people involved with trying to stop Johnny from harassing the citizens of South Korea for content. This South Korean streamer clique consisted of Dagun, who infamously punched Johnny, Youngman, who is the man involved in the trial right now, but also is currently in prison for throwing cinder blocks through the courthouse windows while Seoul was under martial law on December 3rd, 2024. Clearly that wasn't a great idea. And then you have 2 other streamers by the name of J Company and Bang TV who are currently not wrapped up in any legal trouble. But Bang TV was called as a witness today as he witnessed what happened revolving the alleged baton incident. So we got to court, went into the courtroom, and I was getting ready to make a little sketch, and then we found out that Hank and Johnny, they felt humiliated about the deepfakes, and they requested privacy for their testimony. They can do this because on this specific trial day, they are the victims. Oh, we found out that they're in what protection?
Yeah, they're-
witness protection.
Yeah.
Because
young man is so scary.
Yeah, basically they want to, for the safety and like the security of the witnesses, they're sequestering everybody. So they're keeping them separate. So it's also a good thing because they're going to keep them separate for us.
Yeah.
We'll just watch the show. So.
Interesting. So we just found out that Johnny's actually getting 60,000 won to testify here. So now the guy actually has an income. 60,000 won is roughly, what is it, like 40 bucks, 50 bucks?
45.
I would exchange
All right.
right now. Then spend it all at once.
He have to pay. He probably
boy.
paid to Hank right away.
No,
Right.
it goes to the Soju fund.
Straight to the Soju fund? Awful.
I think the last trial everybody came, so I think they try to make it private.
Because
How many
Johnny
people
is
did
the
came?
victim, and therefore the victim can ask, I don't want this
How
to
many
be
people
open
came to
because it's
trial?
so embarrassing to me, even though he's the one that put it on camera. So that's the situation.
You a clout chaser for who?
Cloud chaser for who? What do you mean?
Free Israel. Support the IDF.
That's all?
You're an anti-Semite. I'm a Jew, and you are being anti-Semitic. You are a Nazi.
So we then had to leave the room, but that was fine because thankfully we were still able to find out exactly what was said regardless. Here's the TLDR of Johnny's testimony from our legal connections. They said, in quote, "It was so bad it could have been possible to acquit. He lied countless times, repeatedly said that he didn't know / didn't remember to things that he clearly / probably knows. He avoided questions about having distributed on YouTube before Youngmun. In quote, saying, police already verified I didn't make it. And then he fell back on the whole I didn't make it excuse over and over again. Because for some reason, he really thinks that production versus distribution is still relevant here. He then says that in November, Youngmun made false accusations against Johnny. This is why he apparently filed the charge, which also admits transactional nature here. He also falsely claims that Youngmun distributed first. He then lied to his lawyer on March 27th, said that both Youngmun and Bongbong distributed first. And then he claimed that Youngmun leaked his address, but also claimed he didn't know his own address, so he couldn't even confirm that he knew his own address to know that his address was leaked to begin with. Like, the whole situation was apparently just awful. Then to make things even worse for him, he couldn't remember the important details of the assault. And then he says he doesn't remember who brought the baton. That would be because it's very clear that Hank brought it. Then he also said, in quote, the whole thing was so traumatic that I don't remember. And then says it was the scariest day of his life when Youngman found him. He also says that Gino was the only witness of the assault and then tried to submit video evidence on the spot, which is improper procedure because this should have been submitted to a prosecutor a long time ago. All evidence needs to be submitted up front. And then he admitted that he said, come find me on both October 28th and October 30th, essentially inviting the Korean streamers to go find him. And then finally, he said he filed charges against 1 or 2 other people and mentioned Dagon, but not Bongbong. So that's kind of interesting because why would he say 1 or 2? Because we know he filed them against Dagon, but maybe the ones he tried to file against Bongbong were not successful. Who knows though? We're gonna find out in a few days. And then to make things even worse for Johnny, the judge apparently told him multiple times that his story just didn't add up. And then kept asking questions Johnny didn't want to answer because that would just make things worse for him. So obviously that was a massive train wreck, but here's the notes from Hank's testimony. So Hank says he didn't know who Youngmun is, but accused him of creating deepfakes. He then also asked the judge why it took a month for him to sue, and then told the judge that the Korean law isn't fair to Johnny, so he doesn't trust the Korean criminal system, and thus thinks the case is not serious. Because obviously that's extremely relevant information when you're testifying. Like, dude, nobody cares what you think about Korean law. You're here to testify about this case. Get on with it. He also didn't give a straight answer when it came to the production of the deepfakes, and then stated that he had a desire to reach a settlement and essentially wants money, which, you know, makes sense because it's not like Johnny is a cheap person to be harboring. And then he admits that he's only in this case because of Johnny, and then said, in quote, if Ramsey doesn't want to press charges, then I don't want to either. So that's interesting. You know, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, they did their thing, and it actually seems like it kind of worked out for them in the short term, because they also kind of kneecap themselves by doing this. But then they called Bang TV to the stand, and here he says that Youngman showed the deepfake to explain to viewers the crime committed against him. He then confirms that Johnny attempted to flee to the US after he was attacked. And then on October 28th, he challenged YouTubers to come find him, which obviously mitigates the accusation of stalking. And then he told the court why this group of streamers were actually tracking down Johnny. Because Johnny was harassing elderly, the Statue of Peace, he was trashing Korea, and he was treating Koreans like animals. He then explained that he never saw Youngman hit Johnny with a baton and saw no injury to Johnny. And when it comes to the deepfakes, he thinks that Johnny produced them, but knows for a fact that Johnny distributed them first. And our legal connections believe that the case against Youngman was crumbling, because the deepfake had circumstances similar to Bong Bong. Because Johnny seemed very malicious by showing the deepfakes. Both Bong Bong and Youngman were like, what is this? This is awful. Why is this a thing? Then for the stalking, Johnny said, come find me, which is a massive contradiction when, you know, he's claiming he's being stalked. And then for the assault, Johnny couldn't remember details. He failed to properly submit video evidence, and then they were the ones who brought the baton. So overall, it's an extremely weak case. But then the court called Johnny and Hank back to reach a settlement because Johnny wants mutual withdrawal of charges, and Hank then backs down from demanding money. And Johnny says that he's willing to put this all behind us. And this is where they ended up settling this case, which ended up being a win for both parties in this particular trial. I even have the translated text of the initial settlement here, where the agreement says, all their names, do not wish to pursue punishment for all criminal cases that have occurred between them. Obviously, this must be formalized to go into effect, but there's nothing really stopping this to do so. And we heard one legal opinion that Hank and Youngman will still have to testify next week, but the odds of that happening are probably going to be pretty low. This is because in the last trial, he ended up pleading guilty when it came to the Lotto World incident, and then they ended up canceling the witness they had from Lotto World that was going to testify against him. But as of right now, Johnny is facing 2 deepfake charges, which are heavy-hitting charges, carrying a max of 7 years in prison for each charge. But with one of them being dropped, that's definitely a big win for him. But in doing so, though, he did commit perjury. So that could be a very nasty trade-off for him, which can heavily backfire. Because now he's openly shown that he will happily lie to a judge. For Youngman, though, it absolutely does not make sense to risk fighting this case because he's already in prison. And all of those charges that Johnny tacked onto him could easily add a decade if he was actually convicted for all of this. And let's be real, risking a decade in prison to stick it to Johnny is absolutely not worth it. So trading 3 charges for 1 is definitely a big win for Youngman. But as of now, we don't know of Bong Bong having any deepfake charges pressed against her. So for now, Johnny doesn't have the same leverage against Bong Bong as he did on Youngman. So my understanding is he's facing a max sentence of 12 years due to the cap based on these charges. Even after removing 1 deepfake charge, he's still facing a max sentence of 12 years, although his minimum sentence has definitely been reduced now. But this just made this court case way more interesting because now, I guess Johnny finally locked in. Essentially, Johnny is playing a soccer match and he's losing 7-0, and he finally scored a goal. So he did the lean forward and locked in mode, and now he definitely has a long uphill battle to see if he can get some freedom here. But I am definitely looking forward to seeing Bong Bong testifying in the next couple of days. But since I was kicked out of this courtroom, I wasn't able to make a court sketch. And last time I made one, I was kind of blown out of the water by how many of you guys actually wanted my sketch, as it was bid up to like $500 on eBay. I literally thought it was going to go for like 20 bucks because that's what I said in my last video. But if you want my original court sketch that started all of this from the original trial of Johnny, which was never sold before, I've made prints available here, right here at this link for $20. So, because last time I was like, oh, you can get it for $20. Now you can actually get it for 20 bucks. At the top of the link in the description down below. So get them while you can because I'll be removing them forever soon. And we also dropped a brand new Halloween 2025 collection on Matt.City, which is also limited and many more cities and states, including Seoul. I actually have Seoul here, right here. Including Seoul. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think they came out really cool. And obviously, we also have large mouse pads that cover the entire desk if you want so, or just small ones if you want to bring it around with your laptop. So you can also check those out down below as well. And thank you guys so much for the support, as I'm just forever grateful to be able to travel across the world just to make some goofy videos for you guys. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video, which is probably coming out in like 12 hours or something. Peace.